Marcus called it a fresh start. That was the phrase my brother-in-law used when he and my sister, Danielle, moved into the Meridian Tower on Wilshire Boulevard. A fresh start? As if the last 3 years of borrowing money, missing rent, and calling me at midnight with emergencies had simply evaporated. The moment they signed the lease, on a luxury high-rise, in the middle of Los Angeles, I found out about the apartment the way I found out about most things in my family. Not from Danielle, from my mother, who mentioned it casually over the phone like she was reading a grocery list. Your sister moved into that new building on Wilshire. The tall glass one. You know the one? I knew the one. She says it is very modern. Very upscale. She seems happy. I said that was wonderful. I meant it. I genuinely did. What I did not mention to my mother was that I had driven past the Meridian Tower the previous Tuesday. Not because of Danielle. Because I had a meeting with my property manager about the HVAC system on floors 12 through 18. I owned the Meridian Tower. Not personally. Not in my name. Through a holding company called Crestline, property group that I had registered, quietly in Delaware, 4 years ago when I was 27, years old and had just closed my second logistics contract and suddenly had more money than I knew what to do with. I had purchased the Meridian Tower 18 months ago as part of a portfolio expansion. My property manager handled everything. My name appeared nowhere visible. To anyone looking at the building directory or the leasing office letterhead, Crestline Property Group was just another faceless LLC. Danielle had no idea. Nobody in my family had any idea. Because nobody in my family had ever asked what I actually did for a living. They knew I worked in logistics. They imagined I drove a forklift. The call came 4 days after my mother's grocery list update. Danielle, which was already unusual because Danielle had not called me directly in 6 weeks. We communicated primarily through my mother, who served as a relay station for information. Neither of us wanted to deliver, personally. I answered on the second ring. I need you to not come here, she said. No hello, no how are you, just that. I sat back in my chair. Come where? To our apartment. To the building. I need you to not show up here, okay? Marcus and I are starting over and I cannot have you around right now. It is too complicated. I looked out my office window at the downtown skyline. I could actually see the Meridian Tower from where I was sitting. The glass caught the afternoon sun and threw it back in long diagonal strips. Too complicated. That was Danielle's word for me. Complicated, because I had stopped lending her money 18 months ago. Because I had told her that the $14,000 she owed me was not something I was going to pretend had never happened. Because I had, on one occasion, suggested to Marcus that perhaps a budget would help them. Complicated. Okay, I said. Okay? That is all you are going to say? What would you like me to say, Danielle? She paused. She had been expecting a fight. I could hear it in the silence, the slight recalibration, the disappointment that I was not going to give. Her the argument she had prepared for. I just need space, she finally said. This is our fresh start. I cannot have old energy around. Old energy. I was old energy now. I filed that away next to complicated and said nothing. Fine, she said. Good, thank you. She hung up. I looked at my phone for a moment. Then I opened my email and pulled up the latest report from my property manager. The Meridian Tower, 847 units. Current occupancy, 94%. Monthly revenue, just under $2.1 million. The HVAC issue on floors 12 through 18 had been resolved. The new rooftop terrace renovation was on schedule. I smiled. I put my phone face down on the desk and went back to work. I want to tell you something about silence. People think silence is passive. They think when you say nothing, when you do not argue, when you simply nod and walk away, you are losing. Danielle had thought that her entire life. She had confused my quietness with weakness for so long that it had become her entire strategy. Push until she screams. If she does not scream, push harder. If she still does not scream, assume you have won. She had never understood that the quietest person in the room is usually the one who already knows how everything ends. I did not call Danielle. I did not reach out to Marcus. I did not mention to my mother that the Building her daughter had just moved into was the same building I had purchased for $47 million 18 months ago. I went to work. I ran my company. I paid my bills. I let 3 months pass like water. And I waited for lease renewal season. It arrived on a Thursday in November. Every tenant in the Meridian Tower received their lease renewal paperwork simultaneously. It was standard procedure. My property management team sent them digitally through the tenant portal with a cover letter on Crestline, property group letterhead, outlining any changes to terms, updated amenity schedules, and the contact information for the management office. I did not interfere with the process. I did not add anything to Danielle's envelope. I did not remove anything. I simply let the system do what the system always did. On Friday morning at 9:14 a.m., my phone rang. Danielle, I was in the middle of reviewing a freight contract. I let it ring. It went to voicemail. 30 seconds later, she called again. I let that one ring too. The third call came 2 minutes after the second. I picked up my coffee. I read another paragraph of the freight contract. I let it ring. On the fourth call, I answered. Danielle, you own this building. Not a question this time. A statement she was making to herself as much as to me. Testing how it sounded out loud. Crestline Property Group. I looked it up. I spent 2 hours looking it up. The registered agent, the Delaware filing, the property records. It is you. It goes back to you. Yes, I said. Another silence. Longer this time. How long? 18 months. You bought this building 18 months ago. Yes. And you did not tell me. I set my coffee down carefully on its coaster. You called me 4 days after you moved in and told me not to come to the building. You said I was old energy. The silence that followed. That sentence had a different texture. Heavier. The kind that accumulates when a person is doing very fast, very painful arithmetic in their head and arriving at answers they do not want. I did not know, she said finally. Her voice had dropped to almost nothing. I know you didn't. I told you not to come to your own building. Yes. I banned you from your own building. I did not answer that one. Some sentences are complete on their own. She came to my office the following Monday. She sat across from me at my desk in the same chair where freight brokers and logistics directors sat when we were negotiating contracts. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. Something else. The architecture of her confidence had shifted. She had always taken up a certain amount of space in every room, not because she was loud, but because she operated under the assumption that the room belonged to her. That assumption was no longer visible on her face. She looked at my desk, at the framed logistics certifications on the wall, at the view of the skyline behind me. I thought you drove a forklift, she said quietly. I know. Mom thinks you drive a forklift. I know that too. She folded her hands in her lap. The $14,000. Yes, I will pay it back. I know you will. She looked up at me then. Really looked. The way you look at someone when you are trying to reconcile two completely different versions of them into one person. The sister she had dismissed and the owner of the building she slept in. The old energy and the woman sitting behind a desk that cost more than her car. Why didn't you tell anyone? She asked. I thought about the warehouse floor, the garbage bag, the 3 a.m. heat and the diesel smell and the long walk to the night bus. I thought about every family dinner where I sat, quietly while my accomplishments went unasked about and my failures were assumed. I thought about complicated. I thought about old energy. Nobody asked, I said. She nodded slowly. She did not argue with that. It was the truest thing either of us had said to each other in years, and we both knew it. I did not evict her. I want to be clear about that because this is not that kind of story. I am not interested in burning things down. I never have been. The goal was never to destroy Danielle. The goal, if I am being precise about it, was simply to stop being destroyed by her. I renewed her lease at the standard rate. No adjustments. No conditions. No speech about gratitude or humility or what she owed me. I sent the paperwork through the tenant portal like every other unit in the building. What changed was smaller and more permanent than any of that. She called me the following Sunday, not to ask for anything, just to talk. She asked about my company. She asked real questions and waited for the actual answers. She told me about a problem she was having with a vendor for her small business, and I gave her my freight broker's contact information. My mother called me the week after that. Danielle had told her about the building. "Why didn't you tell us?" my mother asked. She sounded more confused than anything else. Like a map she had been using for years had just revealed an entire country she had never noticed. "Nobody asked, Mom," I said. A long pause. "I'm asking now," she said quietly. I looked out the window at the Meridian Tower, catching the afternoon light and throwing it back across the city in long, bright lines. "Okay," I said. "Then sit down. This might take a while."